Let's talk about the Old Testament. For a lot of us, it can feel like this massive, kind of random library of ancient stories, laws, and poetry. But what if I told you it's not random at all? What if it's actually one single epic story, a unified narrative held together by a few key promises that weave through every single page? I mean, it's a totally fair question, right? It can feel so fragmented. You've got a garden, then a giant flood, a burning bush, and then suddenly a kid is slaying a giant. How in the world do you connect all those dots into one coherent plot? It seems almost impossible.
Well, it turns out there's a key. The whole thing, the entire narrative, is held together by this powerful, three-stranded rope of divine commitments. These promises, the seed, the land, and the blessing, were made to one man, Abraham, and they become the engine that drives the entire plot from Genesis all the way to Malachi.
So let's pull on that first strand, the promise of the seed. This is the promise that answers the most fundamental question of the story. Who? Who is this all about? It's about preserving a specific family line against all odds.
It all kicks off with this foundational promise spoken to Abraham. God says, "I will make you a great nation." Just that one sentence, it sets in motion a drama that's going to span thousands of years. So you see what happens here? After the wide-angle lens on all of humanity, the camera suddenly zooms in on just one guy, Abraham. And right away, the promise is in jeopardy. I mean, his wife, Sarah, can't have children, there's a famine in the land, his family is a mess. So the central question from page 1 is this fragile line even going to survive? And amazingly, it does survive. As the story moves forward, that one family expands into a whole nation down in Egypt. But then the focus narrows again. It zeroes in on one tribe, Judah, and then, even more specifically, on one royal family, the House of David. The tension shifts from, will this family make it, to will the royal seed make it? This graph here shows the pattern perfectly. It's like a heartbeat. The promise faces these near-extinction level threats: infanticide in Egypt, idol worship in the desert, the whole kingdom collapsing into exile. Every single time the line dips, you think, okay, this is it. It's over. But every single time the lineage is preserved, the promise always manages to outlast the crisis.
All right, that brings us to the second strand in our rope, the promise of land. If the seed answers the question of who, then the land answers the question of where. And you have to understand, in this story, geography is never just geography. It's covenantal. It's absolutely central to the whole plot.
And here's that second core promise, again, made to Abraham. To your descendants, I will give this land. This isn't just about a piece of real estate. It's about a specific place, a home, where the relationship between God and his people is meant to happen.
Now, the journey to actually get there, wow, that's a saga all on its own. For Abraham, the land is promised, but he only ever owns a tiny burial plot. Then, his descendants face a 40-year delay wandering in the wilderness. And finally, under Joshua, they enter and take possession of it. But even that is really only a partial fulfillment of the original promise.
And here's the catch. Possessing the land came with conditions. The prophets warned them over and over again. If you keep disobeying, you will be kicked out. So the exile wasn't just a political defeat by Babylon. It was what we call a covenant reversal. It was the devastating undoing of the promise. The people are literally removed from the place of blessing.
Now, after 70 years, a remnant of the people does return. They even rebuild the temple. But it's just a shadow of its former self. There's no kingdom, no king from David's line on the throne, none of the former glory. The people are back in the right zip code, but the promise is still hanging there in the state of not yet.
Okay, so we've got the who, the seed, and we've got the where, the land. But that leads to our third and final strand, which answers the biggest question of all, the why. Why this people? Why this place? What is the whole point? This is the promise of blessing. And the answer, found in this final key promise to Abraham, is just breathtaking in its scope. God says, "In you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." Think about this. This is a direct reversal of the curse at the Tower of Babel, where humanity was fractured and scattered. God's plan, starting with this one family, is to gather and bless all those scattered nations. So the big takeaway here is that Israel wasn't chosen for isolation. They were chosen for a mission. They were meant to be a kingdom of priests, showing the whole world what God is like. Now, to be honest, Israel often failed at this mission. Instead of being a blessing to the nations, they often ended up just imitating them.
But that hope, it never died. In fact, the prophets took that hope and expanded it, telling of a future day when all the nations would stream to God, when a coming servant king would bring justice to the entire world.
All right, so let's weave these three threads together now and see how they create the full tapestry of the Old Testament. How does this three-stranded rope help us see the whole picture?
This chart just pulls it all together beautifully. Look at it. Every major event connects back to these promises. The Exodus, that's about God forming the seed into a nation. The conquest under Joshua, that's about possessing the land. The monarchy with David, that's about establishing the royal seed. And the exile, that's the tragic loss of the land. See? It all fits. It's not random. It's a structured drama.
So, look, if you walk away with just one thing from all this, let it be this. The Old Testament is the story of God patiently, stubbornly preserving the promised seed, securing and disciplining his people in the promised land, all while preparing the way for a blessing that would finally reach all the nations. That's the plot.
And this brings us to the end, which is really a massive cliffhanger. By the last page of the Old Testament, the stage is totally set, but the story is profoundly unfinished. The promised seed, the royal line, it's still alive, but it has no throne. The people are in the land, but it lacks glory. And the blessing is promised to the world, but it hasn't gone global yet. History is just waiting. And that leaves us with one huge question. What happens next?